What's good, y'all? What's good? What's good? I got a whole lot of stuff going on today. I'm excited. While I wait for a few of you to come on in, we have I have a homeschool co-op that I operate with a couple other parents, a couple other mamas, and so we're ending our school year for all of our homeschool kids, and I'm kind of excited about it. We are going to be doing their celebration tomorrow. What's up, Charles? Um, we're going to be doing their celebration tomorrow. And one of the things that was important, and one of the reasons why we created the co op was because we wanted to have some rites of passage and ritual and things like that for all of our kids, right? Peace Queen. Listen, we're waiting on a Chicago date too. It's actually, I'm gonna just put him on the spot. It's Banner's team that's holding this up. So he's got a lot of really good stuff going on. And so they've been hesitant to lock in a date. So I want to say that we're working through some dates. I'm not gonna lie, Chicago, we are not trying to come out there when it's cold. So what we're really trying to do is we're trying to lock in a date in the warmer weather. So that is what's taking us a little bit longer. So please just be patient with us. It's not forgotten. We are literally working on it. We're just having to work out between his schedule and some of the great things that he has going on. Right. Yes, it's him. We ain't about to put him on blast, but it's him. So we just waiting to find out a little bit more. So I just want to thank y'all for coming on in. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button and go ahead and share out this live stream, and we're just going to keep it rolling. Listen, I want to talk about a few things that hold us back. I don't have long, as I was saying before. As I was starting off, we have a homeschool co-op. I'm very excited about this. Is our third end of the year celebration, and so we call it an end of the year celebration because we have a variety of ages from preschool all the way up to high school, and so we do rites of passage for all the kids, but it's not necessarily a graduation. It is an end of the year celebration, but we do acknowledge our kids, one, for finishing the year. We acknowledge our parents. We invite the community to come in and share in that celebration and acknowledgement with us. And then we also make sure that for our kids who are kind of moving on to the next level, that we acknowledge them as well as they would in a traditional type of school setting. And so that is happening tomorrow. So I am super busy getting prepared for that. And then we break for the summer. So that's certainly going to free up some of my time, but our kids are really excited about it, and our parents are excited about it because that kind of gives us like a break from the programming and things like that we've been working on. So that's what I got going on. But I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that are holding us back, and I think that this is not an all-inclusive list. These are just some of the thoughts that I've been having, really just kind of based off of some of the experiences that, I go through just on a day-to-day basis, and I gather up these thoughts. And so this is kind of just a compilation of thoughts that I've had lately that I wanted to kind of put out there. So one of the things that I think holds us back on an individual level, on a community level, and even on a family level, and I'm gonna kind of break into all three of those pieces, is not having a clear vision. This is really but I want to start on the individual level. This is really an issue when it comes to how you interact with yourself and thinking about the ways that you need to move forward in your life. I'm gonna tie this into my next one, which is around self-care. But part of the issue is that you have to determine when you are kind of in this place of being stuck, or you're at this place where you haven't decided to take that leap, or you're scared about failure, or all of those things. You have to ask yourself, is this an issue of not being very clear about what it is that you want to do in your life? Or is this an issue of you not having any like stick-to-itiveness, right? So I see that oftentimes inside of our communities, and where that comes from. So if you're not familiar with me, if you're just kind of tuning in, welcome. I'm a business coach. I coach people along the lines of mindset, along the lines of productivity. And I also help Black-owned businesses get started, grow, and scale, right? So I see this often where people kind of come to me with an idea or something that they want to do, and they lack a lot of like stick-to-itiveness, right? They will make a lot of excuses. There's a lot of things that come up where you will place other priorities over your goals, right? So it'll be like, well, I know I need to do this, but my girlfriends are going out. And then I listen to people make up all these reasons and excuses for why this is something that has to happen. My girlfriends are going out and I just want to, I haven't seen them in a long time, right? And then we'll tie this into something like self-care. I'm gonna touch on that self-care piece in a second, but I see this happening frequently. And I always find it to be very interesting when I really think a lot of it kind of boils down to not really having a clear vision about your passion or your purpose. And so we think about things that maybe we're good at, or we think about things that we've always done, but not really thinking about where it is that we really want to be. That's on an individual level. And that oftentimes stops you on an individual level from actually being able to pursue your dreams and being able to pursue your goals. So I speak a lot to intentional living, and that is like the crux of intentional living. You cannot live intentionally when you have no vision about what it is that you're intending to do, right? What are your intentions? And so when you hear people talk about like setting intentions or, living by design, right? I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you can craft that, living in your purpose, whatever. You have to have an idea of what that is. And sometimes we're so caught up in the hustle and bustle of the day. We're caught up in the latest thing that's happening on the news. We're caught up in a lot of these distractions that really don't do anything for us. They don't really aid to our lives, and we will make justifications and excuses and reasons as to why we have to engage in this type of behavior. And so anyway, if this is you, if that sounds like something that you do, I want to encourage you to kind of take a step back. There is a time period in your life where you might have to like kind of figure out what it is that you want to do, right? And so there was another video I did. I can't remember what it was that I went down. It might have even been a podcast where I kind of like broke down some of the steps to getting me where I am today. You don't have to come right out and know exactly what it is that you want to do or where it is that you want to be. So you do have to take some time, a period of time or going through like this trial and error process. But if you find that you've been going through trial and error for a long time, ask yourself and like just be real with yourself, is this an issue of like being able to stick to something? Because if you lack the ability to really be able to like stick to something and see it through to completion, you're going to struggle and fail in a lot of places. And so if you're a person who's not excelling in your career, it's possible that you have an issue with like stick-to-itiveness, right? Maybe you saw like areas that you wanted to or needed to, develop in professionally. Maybe you saw like a degree or a certification or something like that you were intending to get, and then you stopped. Maybe you were beginning to pursue a direction in your career, and then you stopped. I'm not messing with you today, Charles. So cut out that delight. So there's like these things that you could be doing inside of your life that would help you move forward, right? If it's in your business, if you're a person who has started a ton of different businesses and never have seen success in any of them, like there's a difference to start a business, grow it, have some success, move on. There's a difference in, starting a business, and deciding like this isn't the direction that you want to go in. Like all of those things are valid. But if you find that you do that over and over and over and over and over and over again, then again, kind of come back and assess whether or not this is an issue with you being able to actually stick to something and see it through to completion. Because what you're going to find, even in areas where you're passionate, is that you are going to have things that you, really love to do, but it's only going to get you to a certain level before the real work has to kick in, right? So it doesn't matter who you, who you want to look at in terms of an example. We can look at some common examples. Like you can look at Kobe Bryant. Okay, he may have a natural love for the sport of basketball, but at some point he's got to work through the pain. He's got to work through a lot of those trials, right? How he becomes to be one of the greatest. And you can look at that across the board with any of the greats, but it's like how you get to be there is, you got to work through your injuries. You have to work through being tired. You have to work through those failures or those places that you feel like you could have done better, right? And so going through that process and recognizing that you have to keep going despite when it gets a little bit more difficult, despite when it gets really difficult, is where you're going, is like where that grit is going to come into. It's where that perseverance and your passion is going to meet. And that gives you the ability to really start to see some success, right? So, I think, because I see CD Till says, that's me. I started several businesses and all failed. And you have to look at, what happens when you fail at something, career, business, whatever. I mean, it doesn't really matter what it is, right? What does failure actually mean? Like, failure really only applies if you stop. So, I could look at several things that I've done in this business and other businesses that have failed. Investments that I've made that have not, have the return that I wanted to have, partnerships that I've gotten into that did not do what I needed them to do. But the question is, when is it considered failure, right? So one of the things that I was doing before I started the Black Business Initiative was web and graphic design. So I had an organization. It actually it was the same business and it changed names like 3 times, but that was because I had multiple partnerships that didn't do well, right? And so when it was finally time for me to stop, it was a web and graphic design business. I'm not a web designer and I'm not a graphic designer, so let's just start with that. I had a web and graphic design business. I started it. It was my business, but I'm not a web designer or a graphic designer. And so there came a point where I was basically the salesperson in my business. I was the one who was getting the contracts, getting the gigs, getting the clients, and I was passing them along to subcontractors. And after a while, it was like, okay, I'm good at being able to sell something. I'm at least decent at being able to sell something. I'm not going to say that I'm like the greatest salesperson in the world or anything like that, but I am decent at being able to sell something to someone. But past that, there was nothing really in it for me because it wasn't the work that I do, right? I'm not a designer, web or graphic. So, I had to retain the sales skills and retain my love for business, but switch gears in terms of what that business was, right? And that's kind of why I went through so many partnerships in the first place. But all that to say was at that time, I didn't have a clear vision as to what it was that I wanted to do. That business lasted for, I want to say 4 years, about there, I think 4 years. And it did okay. It never did, anything that was like completely self-sustainable, but it did okay. And it certainly, brought me in a decent amount of additional income, but it wasn't something that I was passionate about. And so there were a lot of days that were really hard, and not hard because I didn't want to work, but hard because I didn't want to work on that. Right. So anyway, just beginning to have a clear vision. And this is the same thing inside of our communities. We have to have clear visions inside of our communities. This is a lot of what the Black Agenda is about, is around creating unity. But we have to have, vision inside of our communities in order for us to have the direction that we're going to move in and not grow weary while we're doing it, right? And then I think we should look at, especially for families, like consider having a vision inside of your family. Like there are times that husbands and wives, they get married or they have kids or whatever, and you're just kind of going through life and you're kind of doing something. But where one of the things that I hear when a lot of people begin to like fall off or whatever with their families, where a lot of the turmoil starts to come in. There's a lot of reasons. We know communication is a big one. We know that money is a huge one, right? Like there's a lot of different reasons, but they become, I think, compounded when you have people who are not necessarily working on the same vision. So you have a husband who's doing his thing, you have a wife who's doing her thing. They're not really instilling any vision inside of their children. They're not really talking as a family about what they are working towards, right? So he wants to be doing something with his money. She wants to be doing something with her money. And so, I mean, those are just some of the things that I have seen when it comes to families that I think, and I say this as a person who is no longer married. So if you're a person who doesn't believe in taking relationship advice from a single person, completely ignore this advice. I'm okay with that. But I have noticed from families that I have seen that are very successful that have lasted for a long time, even if they didn't formally go in and like create a vision for their family, if you actually listen to them speaking, then you hear that somewhere they had like a shared vision, right? And I think sometimes, if you think about like sitting down and creating a shared, family vision, someone said write a vision statement, like if you feel like that's too technical, okay, but having that conversation and recognizing like this is what we're working towards together as a husband and wife couple, like I think those are some of the things that when we don't have that in place that really hold us back. So hopefully I'm not still freezing. I'm sorry guys, I don't have I was supposed to have my office set up. It's not set up. If you ever took a walk in my life, it's crazy. Like just yesterday, for example, I stepped out to go to a doctor's appointment. That's what I left my house for. One thing, a doctor's appointment. And just because we have a lot of projects up in the air, my day actually got hijacked. It wasn't unproductive, but it wasn't what I intended to do. So yesterday I was supposed to be finishing up my office and I ended up getting pulled into quite a few of appointments that all yielded some good things towards the BlackAgenda, also towards my Black Boss Summit. And making some much needed connections. So they weren't bad things, but my day did get hijacked. So anyway, I'm still here in my room and I apologize because I'm a bit far from my router. So hopefully my signal is strong enough to last. All right. So what else did I want to talk about? So not having a clear vision, that's something that holds us back. That holds you back as an individual, as a community, and as a family. The other thing is a self-care movement. So I'm gonna kind of tie this in, right? So let me tell you about this self-care thing. Self-care really bothers me. Like the term self-care doesn't bother me because I think you should take care of yourself. But when I listen to the way people use self-care, oh my God, it is a pet peeve, y'all. Like it's a for real pet peeve. So I have this tattoo on my arm. I don't know, you probably can't see it, but it says, never forget freedom is not free. I got this after I went to war and came back and just recognized some of the burdens that came back with some of the people who I was in Iraq with. People suffering from PTSD, just watching like some of the deterioration of some people who prior to going into that war were like really top notch. And I just watched as a lot of stress took over and other things like that. Like even when they didn't lose their life, there was things that was lost coming back out of Iraq and out of Afghanistan. And so I got this tattoo at that time just to remind me that our freedom is not free. And it's interesting because the tattoo is actually taken on different meanings over time, because now that was a fight at that time where I was at that time was a different place in my life than it is today. But the message is still the same around freedom. And I began to recognize that that there are tolls that this life takes on us, especially if you're Black in America. Like we are in a war, and sometimes it can feel like a Cold War because you get to go to work. You are like literally eating with, sleeping next to, working with the people who we're at war with, right? And it's not really the people, it's the systems, but those systems are controlled by people. Those systems are upheld by people, and those systems benefit certain people. And if you're Black, they don't benefit us. so you begin to recognize like the toll that this war can take on you. So let me give you an example of why I struggle with this notion of like self-care in the way that I perceive it to come out, right? And I'm not going to say that I'm not attacking anyone who's like in this space. I'm just going to say the way that I perceive it to the way that it hits me, the way that I perceive it, and the issues that I take with it, and why I think it's something that kind of holds us back. We're in a war, right? And freedom is not free. I do believe that you have to take care of yourself, but we are not in a position yet where we can really like fully relax and put down, our fight really at hardly any given time. So again, like let me kind of equate that to my Iraq experience. So, every time I leave my room, my trailer, I'm fully geared up, right? I have on my vest, I have my weapon, I have my helmet on. I walk everywhere like that because I'm at war, right? And so even if I'm headed to the dining facility, I'm trying not to use acronyms because if you're not in the military, you're not gonna know what a DFAC is, right? But even if I am, headed to the dining facility, if I am headed to go to the bathroom, just really to shower and get ready for the day. If I am headed over to the track so that I can, get my workout in, anywhere that I am going, I'm still at war and I'm still fully geared up, right? So, okay, when I get inside my trailer, I can take off all that gear and I can kind of, settle it down, right? But here's the thing, at the end of the day, I'm still at war. When I go to sleep, I'm still at war. And so there are places and spaces and areas where you can definitely like come out of your gear, take a moment, to like get yourself back ready, but knowing all the time that you can still be attacked in those spaces and that you still, have to put your gear on every time you step out of that space, right? And so, uh, YouTube start messing with me. Okay, hopefully I'm not freezing up. I think is YouTube messing with me, y'all. Um, so hopefully you know you can kind of understand what I'm saying with that analogy, right? So let's say you're in a hostile work environment. You go to work every day with white folks and you are under, sometimes you might be under like very overt racism, right? You might be in a very racist uh environment. Sorry, was reaching for that word. You might be in a very racist environment, but sometimes you might be in like a microaggressive environment, right? Like maybe it's not that big of a deal. I remember, when I was in corporate America and I would go into work and my hair is pressed and it's like, oh my God, you look so nice, right? And I remember coming in and my hair is like big and it's like, oh, you changed your hairstyle. Like you didn't say anything bad about it, but what you're noticing is that I didn't assimilate today. It's like that's what you see, right? So sometimes you might be in an environment that has a lot of microaggressions and you just kind of deal with that. You might be in an environment that you feel like is really, really great, but maybe when you step out, like you notice things about your neighborhood or you notice things on your, ride to and from work. Maybe you just had little experiences. I remember being in Florida one year with my sister. We were enjoying one of her timeshare location, and I guess we were on like the wrong side of Panama Beach or city, whatever it's called, Panama City. I guess we were on the wrong side of the bridge, apparently, in that area. And so we're like walking to the beach, and we had sodas thrown at us with some guys in a Confederate, with waving a Confederate flag, just yelling nigger at us, right? And it's like, okay, like that doesn't happen every day in my life, but that was like a very, traumatic moment. Like at that moment, we were a little bit nervous. We didn't know if they were going to circle back around. We weren't sure if we should go continue on our way to the beach and like hold on to our power of we have a right to fucking be here. And if we're going to, if we want to go to the beach, we will, right? But that can result in a whole nother type of situation. Had they decided to turn around, we weren't sure if we should just go back, like we weren't even sure if we should just pack up and leave because we're like, oh, this is not what we expected when we got down here. So, you could be in even just those types of situations that require for you to like take a step back and, pull yourself together, because you have decisions that you have to make when you're Black in America, and are in an environment that could result in ending your life over something hella crazy, right? So those are just things that, we have to take into an account. And then I hear something like, I need self-care, I'm going to go on vacation. Great. So go on vacation. But where in that does that change the outcome of your day-to-day life? If you went on vacation because you faced microaggressions at your job, where did vacation actually help you when you came back from work? And so what I see oftentimes happening is that we use this idea of like self-care in a way that when I am stressed, when I am facing something I don't want to face, when I'm tired, we use that as this excuse for us to basically like put down our fight in a lot of sense, right? And I just don't see that. Like, I think about, I'm using going back to the example of Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant had was it an Achilles injury, right? And he's sitting over here trying to figure out how to work through that pain, right? But self-care would have told him, like, you got to sit down, you got to wrap your ankle, you got to rest it, right? And if you listen to like his conversation with Tim Grover, or Tim Grover's version of it, like he talks about the fact that, he tried to let Kobe know, like, this is going to be a long, painful journey back. And Kobe was like, okay, well, let's get started. And so it's not to say like don't take care of yourself, but it is also to recognize that in this fight towards freedom, whether it's individual liberation, whether it is liberation of us as a socioeconomic group and as a community, that we're going to have sacrifices that we have to make. And that this idea of I'm going to burn some candles and I'm going to take a bath, or I'm going to go on vacation, or I'm going to rest, is not necessarily really doing you any justice. Most of the time, I don't see it actually solving any issue. I think that there's a time and a space for you to like, come in and rejuvenate yourself, right? Give yourself what you need to keep going. But we're under assault constantly, and the way that I see it often means that like you're kind of just, you're not pushing through and really taking it to the space that it needs. You lose momentum a lot of times. Like you lose momentum kind of going in that direction. And I think we have to recognize that it's going to take a level of sacrifice that we have been kind of conditioned out of, right? Like this current generation really passed the civil rights movement. Like in the civil rights movement, people were willing to put their lives on the line. And, we see a little bit of that here and there, a few protests, a few marches and things like that. But by and large, we have this idea that's like, take care of yourself, make sure that you're good, make sure that you're not carrying that trauma. And it's like, well, you can't get rid of trauma when you're still at war. We're still at war. We're not in a place where we are liberated and then we can now go back to undo and work through and heal all the trauma that's happening, because we're still being traumatized. We're still being mentally conditioned. We're still being attacked. We are still under a lot of the same pretty much all the same systems, right? So it's an interesting notion to me to try to heal when you are still being attacked. Like you have to stop the attack first, then you heal. And we have not come together and done what we needed to do on our end to stop the attack before we get to that healing part. And so I don't want you to take it as though I'm saying don't take care of yourself. That's not what I'm saying. But I think that when this movement and idea around self-care is really just another distraction that has been put in place that I think can have a very, harmful narrative if it's not like properly managed. If it's not properly managed in a sense that we're still under attack, and that means we're going to have to sacrifice, and that means we're going to have to fight. You have to fight yourself a lot of times, right? Like I talk about the fact that your brain quite literally is not there to help you. Like your brain works against you. So we have to fight against ourselves. We have to fight against these systems. We have to fight against these outside forces that exist, that stop us from being in a position where we are in a place that we can begin to heal. And so we need to, just consider that. So one of the other things is this idea about putting money over everything. This is not everybody, right? And this is a space where, and by when I say not everybody, I feel like this is by and large a leadership issue, but I also feel that we have to hold our leaders accountable when we see this bullshit happening. And we have to recognize, like, even if I like somebody, even if I think somebody is cool, even if I want to be on somebody's good side, like, there's ways to hold people accountable that isn't necessarily like, going all in, right? Um, Sorry, sis. I'm sorry. Hold on. She said it's cool that you didn't answer, but I asked because Dr. Boyce Watkins is in a finance as you are, and Michi X did mention that Boyce Watkins will be attending. So I don't know. I don't know what I didn't answer. I'm sorry. There was a few comments that has scrolled by me for sure because I was talking, but I think, hold on, I see your comment. Is Boyce Watkins going to be attending? So right now, Boyce Watkins is scheduled to attend Atlanta. That's all I got on that. Okay, sorry. I just saw that question popped up. And so I'm sorry, y'all, if I got comments scrolling by me. So anyway, I wanted to just talk real quick about this notion of putting money over everything. First of all, my shirt says morals over money, right? And so that's where I stand. Not that money is not important. Money is a tool, and we need to understand that it's a tool. But it's a tool that can be used as an individual. It's also a tool that can be used by the community. And as a community who is lacking that tool, when we go after using it specifically as an individual, then when we go after using it specifically as an individual, what we are oftentimes doing is we're like cutting over each other because we're lacking like the moral situation, right? So I find this to mostly be a leadership issue because there's a lot of Black folks that actually struggle with getting money. So you should be owed money or due money for your products, for your services, for the things that you do, and you won't charge because you're scared to talk about money. That relationship with money is something that we got to get together. We got to get it together around money. Like we have to be okay with saying this is what I need. If someone was to tell me like what their price is, I am okay with them telling me what their price is. I am also okay telling them that that's something that I can't afford, or that's something that I think is very reasonable and I'm willing to move forward with this transaction. We have to be okay with talking about money. And I find that to be a mindset issue that we as a community have to really get over, right? That doesn't mean you have to go and tell all your financial business, but it does mean that we have to begin to have that conversation. We don't even want to have that conversation with our own families, right? So when we talk about these solutions, when we talk about how we're going to build intergenerational wealth. How do you build intergenerational wealth without having a conversation about money with your kids, right? You have people who are in relationships who don't want to talk about money. They don't know how much their counterpart makes, right? They don't know where that money goes. They don't know where it's spent. You don't want to have a conversation with your children around money, whether it's how to properly spend money, whether it is how to save money, how to invest money. You won't even go and ask somebody about what stocks they're invested in, right? Like that's one of the things I do. So first of all, let me say my stock market game is not super strong. Predominantly because I don't study the stock market very much, right? So what I do is I talk to people who I know are studying the stock market. I know they are into stocks. I just have conversations with them. People will give you so much information when you ask questions. The problem is we be too scared and worried about other people's opinions that we don't even ask questions. I'm not going to ask someone. I have about 4 people who I talk to about stocks. I do not ask them all the details about stocks. I ask them, what stocks are you getting ready to invest in? I even asked them, would you mind letting me know if you like see something that's on your radar that maybe I should put on my radar? I have never had a problem with somebody like telling me that they don't want to give me information on what stock that it is that they like. Because the stock market don't work like that. It's not a shortage of stocks, right? Like if they decide they were going to go and invest in a stock, that doesn't bar me from investing in that stock. And I just have an upfront conversation. Like I am invested in real estate right now. So because I'm still doing research on real estate, I don't have time to research real estate and stocks, but I think it's a place where my money should be. So I just go and ask questions. So if I see a stock that I like, I put it on my watch list. I will wait. I go back and periodically check. I'm not hounding them, but I'd be like, hey, did you invest in that stock yet? Or like, what price point were you thinking about getting in on it? And they give me that information. I'm looking for that price point. And it's been hit or miss. I remember when Sprint was super low. I remember somebody saying, okay, well, they were going to jump in at Sprint around $2, right? And Sprint got to be around $2. And then, actually, I take that back. So Sprint never dropped down to the $2 mark, specifically that I can remember, but it hovered very close to the $2 mark. I did not jump in at that time. By the time I came back around to Sprint, it had jumped up to like almost $6, right? And so I jumped on in there. I jumped in on Sprint late because now Sprint hovers like in between $6 to $9. But when it was down there like that $2 range, like had I jumped in around that $2 range instead of waiting for it to actually hit $2, I probably would have made like 300% on my money so far. 2, 4, 6. Yeah. So where it hovers, I would have made about 300% on my money. But I didn't jump in, right? No sweat off my back, but it's just like, ask the question. Somebody else pointed out Sprint to me. I never would have looked at Sprint. I hated Sprint as a company. So I didn't even think to go and look at Sprint, but that was something they were following. And then it did what they thought it was going to do. It dropped down to 2 and then it jumped on up or whatever. And it's, like I said, it's up a couple 100% over what it was, at that time. So, we don't ask questions, right? But we don't talk about our money situation. We don't ask a lot of questions. And that in and of itself, is a problem. Hold on one second, because you asked me, would I use the method of gentrification to benefit Blacks? For example, get Black the money to fix their own neighborhood up to a higher value. Give me a second, Paul. I'm gonna come back around and answer that. Let me just kind of finish this money over everything situation. So here's the thing. We oftentimes, so 1, we don't ask questions. 2, we often lack patience when it comes to money. And we have to recognize that when we see some of these things, there are certain things that have happened overnight, but that's not the average story. One of the things that I want to get us out of is this idea of seeing an exception to the rule and trying to run with that as like the thing to do, right? So if you see like a company who, they went in and like for whatever reason, they found some dope ass angel investor. And then next thing you know, a year and a half later, 2 years later, their product was booming and they can't believe, like, that's an exception to the rule. That's not what happens most of the time. If you happen to get into a situation where you're the exception, like, I'm going to clap and root for you all day, but that's not the rule, right? Like, if you go and watch people who are by and large becoming successful, it is a long, tedious process. And so when we lack patience, that it undermines like the process that it's going to take in order for you to get there. And it means that you're not really vested in what it's going to take for you to get there. Instead, you're kind of looking for that like get rich quick thing or overnight thing. That goes back to not having any vision. And that goes back to lacking stick-to-itiveness, because if it doesn't like instantly make you some dollars and some cents, you struggle, to make that happen. Right. So anyway, one of the things that happens, I'm going to bring this back to a leadership issue, is in leadership, we are fighting over these scraps. And what we're finding is that there are leaders in our community, and I'm using the word leaders lightly, like right, people who have centers of influence, people who have reached levels of status. I'm not going to say power. I am going to come back and talk about that. I am going to come back and talk about like status versus power. But people who have reached certain levels of status, people who are centers of influence and things of that sort, and they put their own individual needs and their own individual desires for money over that of those who they claim to serve. And on top of that, it's for scraps. So it shows that there is a certain type of mindset, like I don't know why I'm struggling to think of words today, y'all. It shows that there is a mindset of lack versus a mindset of abundance, even inside of those who are building up, followings and influence, and are holding positions or uh, positions of status, right? So I have a couple of these examples that happen. I'll give you two examples of personal situations that happened without mentioning any names, but these are just things that have happened. So there was a project that I was working on. This project was to build some services for marginalized communities. So obviously, the majority of the work that I do is specifically towards Black communities. But when you're doing like coalition building and you're working with other organizations that are also bringing the needs of their communities together, then I come in to represent a Black voice in some of those spaces, in some of those cooperative spaces. So there was a project that I was working on. We were going to be bringing services to the Black community and other marginalized communities. Services for entrepreneurs, right? So 95% of Black owned businesses are single member LLCs, sole proprietorships, and that means that they are doing all of their work. And sometimes they need those back end services. They need legal help, they need accounting help, they need help with administration, things like that. So we were going to be bringing these services. So we're in a group of people, and this is where, like, this is where it comes. There's two parts here. Like, one is having paperwork, right? But the other side is just being a fucking leader of integrity. And when we see that that isn't happening, holding those people to the fire. So there was no paperwork amongst the organizations that were there to like not compete against this coalition. So let's start with that. So we all came together. We had all been working on the same type of thing from these different areas, and then we all got to working together. And one of these people, so we submitted some proposals to get funding so that we could get in the services that we were going to put out to everyone else, right? So hopefully I said that clear. So we're a group of organizations. We're looking for funding. We're going to take that funding and we're going to provide services for entrepreneurs to get them the services that they need. So in this group, there is a person who then doesn't say anything to the rest of the group, never breaks off from the rest of the group, but actually goes in and copies the exact same situation and submits proposals to the same place, but submits them just with their organization. So it undercuts the collaboration, and they did that because they knew it was a great idea and they just wanted to get dollars for their organization specifically. So you cut off a collaborative effort that would have supplied dollars and services to the community as a whole in order for your own organization to go and get dollars. That's poor leadership. It's really shitty. It puts money over the good of the community. It breeds mistrust between organizations when we need to be able to trust each other to collaborate, right? So those are things that need to be checked. Now, had another situation. I had a business coach who, coaches need coaches, right? So my organization is at one level. I go to a business coach to try and take my organization to a new level. I go to this business coach. This business coach is supposed to be about Black women entrepreneurs. It's supposed to be, really like pushing hard Black women entrepreneurs. This business coach says, I see a lot of similarities in our businesses. No shit. You're about Black women entrepreneurs. I'm about Black entrepreneurs. I don't see that as being any issue. I come to you for a professional service. That's what you're supposed to provide for me. So not only does this person have all of the information to my back end, all of the things that I'm working on in my organization, my entire business model, all of the things that I currently have going on, as well as the projects that I am working on for the future, right? How I'm intending to grow. And then they say, hey, let's partner. So here goes again, and I talked about this in my podcast about starting up your Black business, but here it goes again where there's no paperwork involved. And so now we decide that we're going to partner. Let me not say no paperwork involved, but there wasn't substantial, there wasn't the right paperwork involved. But then she comes and says, hey, let's partner. So we partner, and by partnering, what we really did was we grew and expanded upon the ideas that were already in my business model and that were already like what it is, what I was working on and what I was doing, right? So we expand upon this and we start submitting proposals for funding. So we started putting out proposals all over the place for funding, and then we decide that we're not going to work together. Now, what's crazy is that we decide that we're not going to work together because as a person who is about women entrepreneurship and uplifting Black women, she has an issue about the fact that I have children. So she lists this as an issue that, me and my family, me and my kids, right? That's a problem. And so I'm even pushing all of that to the side. Okay, cool. So we're in the middle of negotiating how we're going to split up. And this woman goes back and actually withdraws all of our joint proposals and submits individual proposals for the same thing based off of my work, based off of what my organization had already been doing and had been planning to do, goes and submits those proposals to go and get funded. So it's interesting because leaders are fighting over scraps. And what's interesting is that we're in two different levels of financial literacy. I'm not worried about those scraps. Like, would have been helpful? Of course, all income streams are helpful, but I'm not worried about those scraps because I already have multiple streams of income. That person doesn't have multiple streams of income, doesn't own income producing assets. And so they are out here basically looking out for themselves, right? But under the guise of being for the community. And so I always find it interesting, like the way that these things happen and operate within our communities is detrimental. It's to the point where we're fighting over a couple of thousands of dollars, but when there are billions of dollars that are pouring into Denver, and Denver's just one area. So this happens everywhere. I am only using my personal experiences because these are things that I've seen. And like I started out by saying, these are just some things that I'm throwing out here based off of my experiences. But oh my God, like there are billions and billions of dollars that are literally pouring through the city of Denver, and you are fighting over a couple $1,000s. Small fucking minds that instead of collaborating and working together and moving an agenda forward, having a clear vision, being able to work together, we fight against each other. And what's crazy is that these are the crumbs. These are the crumbs. We ain't sitting at the table. This is not a seat at the table. These are crumbs. But we feel good because we got us a few little crumbs, despite the fact that we have like not only created division in our community, created and breeded mistrust in our community. We have not actually done anything for, the people as a whole, but none of that matters because I got my little individual crumbs, right? And so those are problems, I said, like where we put money over everything. I find that to by and large be leadership issues. And it's something that really should be addressed. I already told y'all, I don't know how to address it. I'm not with the call out culture. If I was, I would have said everybody's name. I don't say everybody's name because at the end of the day, I feel like that doesn't actually help and solve the problem. But knowing that these are the things that are out here, like we have to start finding ways to hold these individuals accountable and remove them out of power, remove them out of leadership, remove them out of status, remove them out of the way because they are halting progress for us as a people when they put their own individual needs over that of the collective. And then the last thing, y'all, is these petty differences. Before I get into the petty differences, let me answer this question about gentrification. So first of all, I don't believe fixing up a neighborhood. If you want to look up the technical definition of gentrification, fixing up the neighborhood would fit that bill. But truly, when they're talking about gentrification, they're talking about devaluing property, coming in, basically being able to buy it up and then rebuild it, and it becomes worth more. You displace the people who are in that neighborhood by making it, making the pricing outside of their reach, right? So, do we get Black money to fix up our own neighborhoods to a higher value? So, I feel like that's a loaded question. It's kind of out of the scope of what I'm talking about, so I'm only going to answer this briefly. Yes, we can fix up our own communities. when it comes to whether or not that is then going to equate to higher value, that is where again systems play a role, because where are the values in communities created from? So what happens if you have a house? What makes the difference between whether or not that house is worth 100,000 or half a million? If you think it's about what else is in your neighborhood, if you think it's about what comps have sold near you, like none of that is really the case, right? This is where community planning or city planning comes into play, where they decide that this is what's getting ready to come down the pipe. Even if you've done nothing to the house, if they've decided that they're going to put some major asset or amenity in that area, without doing anything to that house, you can have increased the value of the house, right? You can increase the value of a house by going through and updating it and fixing it, and fixing up the neighborhood and things like that. But by and large, all of those values are done through basically planning, um, and arbitrarily creating value in that place. And they're upheld by things like appraisals. So if we go into a community, even if it looks nice, even if it has some amenities, even if it even if we've done all the things to beautify the area and all of that, at the end of the day, if an appraisal does not match that, then if an appraisal tells us that our house is only worth $100,000, that's what it is, right? I'm seeing that in Detroit. I have a house. It's on one side of Linwood. On the other side of Linwood, you have houses that are, $200,000, $300,000. The houses on my side of Linwood, they're saying are between like $30,000 to $70,000, right? What makes the difference? Well, in a 1 mile radius, there are houses that are selling same size, same condition, that are more. What the main issue is that it's redlined, right? Like there's one area where you have people who are buying up property of a certain type of status, and in my area they're not. So yeah, so that's kind of the short version. Like, do I think that we could create some value or whatever? Yes, but is that going to create all the value? No. Give me 1 second, guys. Y'all know I'm a mama. I got my son at the door, but this door he can't open. But he must have just woke up from his nap, so he's over here at my door. All right, so Crystal says, after a lot of meditation, I realized that I'm scared of money because in my head, 90% of Blacks with money sell out. I think since I cleared that judgment, my money's been flowing different. So that's what's up. I mean, it definitely takes some thought process around that. That kind of goes back to the money over everything, and just kind of changing our mindsets around money. Yeah, I mean, we have to recognize the way that we see money. There are a lot of people who are not sellouts, but it depends on what you want, right? Like, I think about where my passion lies. Before I had really began to understand like what it means to be Black in America, I didn't particularly have a passion for Black people. We just were people, right? And so a lot of my services, like when my web and graphic design business was there, I sold web and graphic design to pretty much everyone. Like I had Asian clients, white clients, Hispanic clients. I had one Indian client, but I had a lot of different types of clients, right? And so that wasn't an issue for me. Depending on what I sell today, not an issue for me. Like a lot of my shirts, like this morals over money shirt, like you don't have to be Black to wear morals over money, right? You don't have to be Black. Now I have an all Black everything shirt, right? That shirt probably would want to be Black, but but there are other shirts. Like I have another one that says mindset over everything. Like you don't have to be Black for that. I couldn't care less who bought those shirts. Matter of fact, anyone who is in that space of trying to change and adjust their mindset, I welcome you to go get it. You can go and shop at shopbbi.com. Even a lot of my coaching services are geared towards Black people because that is now my frame of reference that I do a lot of my research and my studying and my statistics and all of that on. But at the end of the day, You don't have to be Black to come and get my coaching services. If you want to adjust your mindset, if you want to create better productivity, you can certainly come and get my services from me. Now, if you are a business that is not a Black owned business, you cannot get the Black Business Initiative services. It's not built for you. Those services are built specifically for the Black community. So if you have a great idea or a passion or whatever it is, and you take that and you make it a business, and then you start to grow and capitalize on that business, your business doesn't have to just be for Black folks by any means. You have all these other communities that come into our community to get our dollars. We should certainly be going into their communities, or at minimum, we should be very much open to, targeting them. If you're a Black-owned company, it is okay for you to make white-targeted media or advertisement. It's okay for you to make Asian-targeted advertisement or Hispanic-targeted advertisement, right? Because if your product, unless your product is specific to the Black community, go and get all the rest of those dollars. So success doesn't equate to necessarily being a sellout. I think it depends on what you want to consider being a sellout. If you're, I don't know, take Lisa Nichols, for example. Lisa Nichols does not specifically talk about Black, but she will talk about her life experience being Black in these certain areas, but her product and her service isn't for necessarily just for Black people. So her being able to make it and be successful, I don't think necessarily makes her a sellout. Now, there are other things that can make you a sellout, but that in and of itself, I don't think necessarily makes us a sellout. Our businesses will absolutely do better with diverse customer bases. Absolutely. And other people begin to make those targets. Like you go and you look at something that is L'Oreal, and L'Oreal goes and makes, when L'Oreal puts Beyonce on their cover, they are targeting you, right? They're targeting a Black consumer. When they go, this is one of the things that I didn't get about the Shea Moisture issue. So before Shea Moisture sold to Unilever, I think they sold to Unilever. Before Shea Moisture sold to Unilever, there were people who were pissed because they started targeting white people in their marketing ads. And I'm like, Walgreens, whatever, right? You have like your beauty section, right? So you have your hair care beauty section, and then they specifically have a section that's like ethnic hair care, right? Which is a tiny ass little shelf, right? Unless you live in like a predominantly Black area, maybe you have a few extra shelves, but you have this tiny ass shelf out of the whole aisle that's dedicated to ethnic, right? That's a whole nother, situation. But what if they want to get off the ethnic shelf and they just want to be on the fucking shelf? They gotta advertise to Asian people and white people and redhead people and blonde hair people, right? So we went and like we killed them. Like if you go through social media back in that time, it was like we murdered them for wanting to expand their marketing, right? So then they sell to Unilever. That did not, I was not happy about that, but they made a business move. And then I believe they went and bought, was it Ebony? No, they bought something else. I can't remember, but they went and bought something else after they sold to Unilever, right? So, I don't think that they don't get it. Like, I think that they had to make certain moves. I wish they hadn't sold, but whatever it was that made them sell, like, they went and took some of that capital and they bought something else that was in the Black community, or bought back something, I believe. I can't remember what it is. But it's just interesting to me, like the way that we see that situation. So we do have to spend some time asking ourselves how we see money, how can we move past what some of those limitations are, because they do limit us, and it doesn't take away from the system. But always remember, like, everything that I do, and this is my philosophy. Everything that I do, I work to advance me as an individual, and I do work to advance us as a collective. I'm involved in several projects. I'm now beginning to look into how to work on policy issues that affect the Black community as a whole. My organization is about, the Black community as a whole, but I also do things that are for my individual success, because I can't wait on everyone. And how am I wanting to convey that? What I mean by that is that we do have the ability to break against what, the individual, I'm sorry, we do have a chance to break out of the system. Individually, we do have a chance to break out the system. The reason why you can't just leave it up to the individual is because if I only left it up to the individual, where does that leave my children? Or my grandchildren? Like, I'm thinking multi-generationally, right? I'm saying that if I left it up to the system, if I left the system the way it is, and I just only cared about myself, then that means that statistically, my children, my grandchildren, my great grandchildren, all of them are fucked statistically. So I can still work to bring myself up out of the system, or I can bring work to bring myself into a better position in the system. But I can also, and I must also, it is my duty and my responsibility to also break the system, because I am not going to leave it up to chance about what's going to happen to my future generations. Does that make sense? So still work on you individually, and what you can do for yourself, but also come back, and make sure that you're spending time breaking down the system, because otherwise you're putting your own lineage at risk to being subjected to the system. So I hope that makes sense. So let me jump into this petty differences, and then I'm gonna jump off of here. So the last thing that holds us back is our petty differences. So during the course of doing this Black agenda, and this has happened to me in other places, but again, as I said, I'm just pulling these thoughts from, things that I've been going through myself, experiencing, and I'm pulling together my thoughts, and I'm giving them to y'all. These petty differences is crazy. So as you know, we announced that we are making a stop here in Denver for the tour, right? So we had a 7-city tour. Now we have an 8-city tour because we added in Denver. So we are bringing the Black Agenda on tour to Denver. And by the way, if you're in Denver, go get your ticket at theblacagendaontour.com. Okay, so we're bringing folks here. So we pull this panel together. Now, we're very intentional. So we knew that the people who we pulled together on our panel have followings and also have enemies. I seen that, sis. Thank you. Look forward to seeing you there. They have enemies and they have followings, right? But we also make sure they had good points to talk about. So we ain't bringing nobody who is finna not give y'all something that applies directly to the Black agenda. But here's the thing: when it comes to those enemies, so at this point, we've only announced, we announced 3 or 4 days ago, I think, that we were coming to Denver. And what's crazy is, in that time, we've had people who have contacted us who is like, now, I don't know if somebody has contacted somebody else because they said they weren't fucking with me, but I will tell you, we've already had what? Michi X? I'm not fucking with her. What? Brandon Pryor? I'm not fucking with him. What? Jonathan McMillan? I'm not fucking with him. What? Shay J? I'm not fucking with her. It's like, are y'all kidding me? Are y'all kidding me? Of course we're not. But we're not kidding, right? And somebody might have contacted them and told them they wasn't messing with me. Ain't nobody contacted me and told me they wasn't messing with me. But it's interesting to me because I see this all the time. This is certainly not just with the Black agenda. It just made me laugh, right? Because we talk about wanting to bring something to some place. We talk about needing unity. We talk about how we move forward as a community. And we let all these petty differences separate us, right? So it's interesting because we have this election going on. So we have the current Mayor Hancock. He's been in office for 8 years. He's potentially headed for his 3rd term, which will put him in office for 12 years. We have this little Becky, this little blonde-haired Becky, who I can't even begin to run down the what the hell are we thinking with her, right? Like, she's by far not a good candidate. And so you could dislike the mayor all you want to, but I am really confused by everyone who just wants to highlight her. And I think it's there's a hatred for the mayor that says anybody is better than him. That's really where they're sitting at, because they cannot make any more of a flimsy argument for this woman. This woman don't know what the NAACP stands for. She has missed vote. She has not voted herself in the last 3 elections. I don't even know how a politician comes out and okay. There's a politician who has a record of not voting, right? She was previously Republican, And now she's Democrat. So, when Republicans start trying to switch over to Democrats just because they think they have a better chance of winning in a democratic society, like Colorado is by and large pretty much Democrat. I think we were considered a swing state, but we've gone Democrat for a while now, right? So she's previously a Republican. She is, I guess that she's saying that she's not a developer, but that her job basically brings development. She claims it brings developers, community, and organizations together, but basically she brings in development and tries to create like community spaces, but community spaces for who? Because she's not looking to build community spaces for Asians, Hispanics, or Black people. So it pretty much leaves white people. Like she's looking to create community for white people. And so, but what's interesting to me is if you look at Mayor Hancock or you look at this potential mayor candidate, I said it's a dime or two nickels, right? Like we're talking about the same thing. This is not an election that is going to do anything to advance the Black community in Denver, Colorado. But it's interesting how the Black community is inwardly attacking each other over whether or not we're going to get a dime or we're going to get two nickels. This is what we're talking about. And the amount of hatred that is being spewed at each other over petty shit that isn't going to make a difference and certainly isn't going to unite us in a way that we can actually make a solidified agenda to move forward after these next 4 years. Because no one thinks this girl, Jamie Gillis, is a great candidate. They just don't like Mayor Hancock. So no matter which way we go, in 4 years, we need to groom up and come together as a united community in order to have a candidate and an agenda ready for the next election. How would we do this if we're going to tear each other apart over petty differences? How would we do this? And this doesn't just happen here in the elections. This doesn't just happen in the BlackAgenda. This doesn't just happen in Denver. This is a Black community situation where we feel like we have to like each other to work together, and we don't. Right? So even though I just told y'all about two leaders in the community who are about some bullshit, and I use the word leader very lightly, two people who have influence, two people who have some stature, even though I just told you about them, like if we needed to come together to work on something that was actually going to move us forward, I would work with them. However, considering I know their record and considering I know that they are willing to put money over everything, how I work with them would be what changes, right? I would have to be sure that they are not in certain positions where they have already proven themselves to not be accountable. Like you can't have that position. But it doesn't mean that I cannot be in the room. It doesn't mean that I cannot work with them. It doesn't mean that I cannot attend the same function that they're attending. It doesn't mean that I cannot, look past that so that we can all talk about the greater good of the community. And that is something that happens very frequently, is that we can't get over these petty differences. We be talking about, I ain't working with so-and-so because I don't like the way she dresses. I ain't working with so-and-so because you remember what he did. He cheated on my cousin. What does that have to do with how we move forward, right? It's like these things that we just allow to separate ourselves. I'm not working with them because, they are not Christian. I'm not working with them because they are Christian. I'm not working with them because, and it's like fill in the blank. 9 times out of 10, you're not working with them over some petty difference that you just can't get over. And as a people, that's something that's going to hold us back. It's going to continue to hold us back. It allows us to separate and divide off of stuff that's not that important. I'm not working with that group because that group is too old. We need fresh meat. Okay, well, why don't you go and bring the fresh meat on in so we can all work together? You got old people who I'm not working with that group because they're too young. They think they know everything. It doesn't matter which way we go. We find these petty differences that stop us from actually being able to move the work forward. And they are really quite petty. And it doesn't matter how eloquently you try to establish why you're not working with them. Because let me tell y'all, we got some smart people who will run you down a whole eloquently designed argument as to why it makes perfect sense that they're not going to get over their petty difference in order to move forward. Right. So I just, those are my thoughts. Those are the things that are holding us back. We ain't got no vision. We are too caught up in a self-care movement without understanding that we are truly at war. And although you must take care of yourself, but we have to understand it's going to take some sacrifice, and we're going to have to push through a lot of the tough times in order for us to get through. We can't be putting money over everything, and we can't let petty differences divide us. So that's what it is. Thank you, King. I appreciate that. Thank you. We can't let those petty differences divide us. So that's all I got for y'all. What's up? You caught me live. I appreciate that. Well, unfortunately, I'm getting ready to get off. So please subscribe so you can catch me live again. But guess what? I come on live around 3:00-ish on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That's where I am. That's where I'm at. So let me close out with all of my little plugs, y'all. We got the Black Agenda on Tour happening. You can head over to the BlackAgendaOnTour.com. Make sure you text Black Agenda to 484848. If you want to work with me personally, I do have a couple of coaching slots open. My discovery sessions are starting to fill up. Let me answer that question real quick. I actually get answered that. I get asked that a lot. So real quick, if you are interested in coaching with me, I do a free discovery session. It is a short session. It is about 20 minutes long. We're going to break into what your issues currently are, because if I am not the right coach for you, I am not going to take your money. So believe me, I will put you in the direction of somewhere else if I do not believe that I am the person who can help you. So before we even get to how much does it cost, let's talk about if I'm the person that can help you. So you can set up a discovery session with me. And then from there, if I believe I am a person who can help you, then I will talk to you about my packaging. I try not to do one-off type of sessions most of the time, because I am a person who focuses in on productivity, habit building, and mindset. And you're not going to shift your mindset, change your habits, or become more productive in one session. So I do tend to sell in packages. All right. I do have payment plans. So I hope that is like a frequently asked question list there that I hit off for you if you are interested in coaching with me. But you can also connect with me at Patreon at Grind with Jice. You can do that. And we have things anywhere from $1 up to $20 a month. And that's another way for you to connect with me if you don't want to necessarily go through a one-on-one coaching package. I do have a group coaching package that will be coming out soon. And I will have more information on that as soon as it is out. I anticipate it being ready at the end of June. All right. So that's all that information. If you want to email me at info@BBIProfessional.com. That comes directly to me. And I think that's everything, y'all. I think that's everything. All right. So until next week on Tuesday, I will see y'all. Peace.